I got my CFP shirt for today,
Oh,
Yogs.
you know what? It was Halloween last week. It's the CFP gear this week. I got my Helenski's Hope hoodie on.
I
So
know, which is always going to take the cake. But yeah, I felt like I was going to come correct, and I'm
yeah,
ready for it. Week 2, CFP rankings, baby. Yogi Roth, Ashley Adamson here to break it all down as we always do. And let's just get right into it, Yogs, because there's so much that happened on Saturday, and there's a lot to talk about coming up this weekend. 5 Pac-12 teams ranked in poll number 2. And we should just start with the top 6 overall from last week. The committee did not move them. So Ohio State, Georgia, Michigan, Florida State remain top 4. Washington and Oregon both still sitting at 5 and 6. But I got to say, Yogs, what jumps out at me as you kind of look at this, Oregon State now 7 and 2. The Beavs move up 4 spots to number 12, which is the highest CFP ranking in program history. Go Beavs.
unbelievable.
Awesome. And first time Arizona has been in the CFP rankings in 6 years. October 31st, 2017 was the last poll that they appeared in. And they are back, baby, sitting at number 21. And we're going to talk about the Wildcats because it's awesome. Utah holds serve, and UCLA and USC both fall out of the top 25 after losses on Saturday. So a lot to dive into, I guess. Big picture, your initial reaction, where do you want to start?
Well, let's start at the top. I think, and by that I mean when you look at all the Power Five leagues, what the Pac-12 has done. I mean, back-to-back weeks. Last week, Dan Lanning, or excuse me, Kalen DeBoer is on the CFP show. This week, Bo Nix is on it. Like, the country's paying attention. Herbstreit and Fowler have flown out back-to-back weeks to LA, UCLA, Colorado, and last week in the clash with UW and SC. So I think there's something to that. So you don't have to fight as hard as we've had to in years past for recognition on the West Coast. But I still feel this, because I'll be honest, I was disappointed and am disappointed with where Washington sits. They're undefeated. Look at who they played, and then look at the totality of their season. And that's the thing that the committee has to figure it out. And that's the nuanced part. Is it 4 best today? Is it the 4 best bodies of work? I think when I look at Washington, yes, they had their lull, but look at what they did over the weekend. Look at what they did against a team that's ranked right behind them. I thought if there was a week that the committee would say, yeah, they've looked better, because Florida State almost lost to Boston College. You watch that game. You look at Ohio
Dialed
State,
in.
dialed in. They lost to the Rutgers Scarlet Knight, formerly of the Big East. Or excuse me, it was a tight game at halftime against Rutgers, and then they pull away. You look at Michigan and have played no one. You look at Georgia's schedule, not that impressive. I mean, they're only going to have to leave their stadium, I think, 4 times all season. So you start to comp the games, you get into it. Like, I look at the Georgia, and they're going to get wins because of the SEC and props. Well, let's be realistic about it. They beat an Auburn team by a score. If Cal's kicker found success, Cal would have beat Auburn, right? They rolled Kentucky, who got drilled by Missouri. Like, I just think that, like, if you're going to start to nuance those things, which you should be doing at the top, I would have thought Washington had a chance to climb into the top 4. And what we can't have, in my opinion, is just, well, the one team that wins, whoever wins out, if it's UW they're in, or if it's Oregon they're in. Yeah, no kidding. But how about a dialogue around the best league in the country? You talk about where Oregon State is sitting. Oregon and Washington still have to play Oregon State. So I just hope as these games come to fruition the next couple of weeks, that's taken into consideration, versus just let them sit where they are, and then it'll naturally take care of itself. Because I think we should be having a discussion. If Oregon beats UW and they both win out and get to the title game, why wouldn't they both go if we had a couple other losses and not as many undefeated teams? So that's kind of where I sat. I was a little frustrated with where UW continues to sit at the top.
Yeah. And I think I will just say, and it's why we have these conversations. It's why we're doing this Instagram live. And please, everyone, chime in. We'd love to hear from you if you have any questions or comments. We always love to talk about what you guys want us to talk about. But I kind of I feel differently. I'm just like, hey, Washington and Oregon, to me, it doesn't matter where they're ranked right now. They are in position. And if they take care of business, either one of them, they're going to be fine. And they are, as far as the Pac-12 is concerned, that race, they're the only teams in the driver's seat, only 2 teams that don't need any other help. If they run the table the rest of the way, they will be playing in Vegas. And we'll talk about maybe them a little bit more in depth in a minute, but I would love to start with the Wildcats. Like,
Yes.
what's going on in Tucson right now? So 3 straight wins over top 25 teams for the first time ever. First ranking, as I mentioned, since 2017, which was also the last year they went bowling. They are now bowl eligible. And I don't know where you want to start. Like, Noah Fafita, by the way, all 5 starts have come against ranked teams, and he's won 3 of them. and one of them was a loss to Washington. One of them was a triple overtime loss to USC. Like it's been cool. And Gronk partying on the sideline. It just feels like all is right in the desert.
You know what's fun about the CFP, and we both have young kids? It's like in one moment it could be chaos and you're like angry and frustrated, and then it's like, oh, banana, and you're like, yeah, I'm really happy. And that's how this is. Like 1 minute frustrated with where UW sits, but elated for where Jed Fish sits. And I think you can even make an argument of like, hey, if they keep winning out, how high can this team climb among the teams that have 3 losses? I get why Notre Dame is ranked higher than them because of the common opponent. Notre Dame drilled SC and Arizona lost, as you referenced, in a tight one. But I'm curious to see how this shakes out, because they're being talked about as one of the hottest teams in the country. They should. And I think we just have to give credit to the build. The build. I mean, you were there for their one win against Cal in year 1 with Jed Fish. They had 8 games going into the fourth quarter where it was a 1-score game, and they started 5 quarterbacks his first season. I'm calling their game this weekend against Colorado. And you just look at and reflect back on this build. It's been so impressive. And then how they've done it. You know, they weren't able to do what Arizona State and Colorado did this year in terms of total rebuild and flip of the roster. Jed Fish had a class already signed by Kevin Sumlin and his staff when he got there. So his first real class is the one that you referenced, Noah Fifita, Tetsuo McMillan, Big Jonah, Savanaya. They're starting, I think, 13 players from that class. So they're doing it in recruiting, and they're supplementing it in the portal. And I just think they're building something really special. I think Jed Fish and that staff is as hot as any staff in the country right now in terms of the incredible rise, his assistants, him. I mean, it's been really impressive to watch. And I think we should give him credit. And you're right. Like, can you imagine what Saturday night and a Sunday morning was like? Scooby Wright, you had Gronk there. Like, if there was a campus we could have flown to, that would have been the one where you didn't sleep at all. You partied till the sun came up because of what they're doing. And they got a chance to win out, Ash. And that's going to be the challenge for this team, to find out how real they can be. I believe they can. Can't wait to see it with my own eyes on Saturday.
Yeah, and we'll be there too. Our pregame show is going to be there. So we got the whole crew. 6 wins this year for Arizona. They had 6 total combined the last 3 years. So yeah, the arrow is pointing up. There's no doubt about it. They're just printing money at dirtbags these days.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, let's move on. Let's go back to Washington. At 16 straight wins. I mean, they haven't lost since last October when we were at ISU and we were at that game. And I think after a couple of weeks in which the Huskies offense wasn't firing on all cylinders, people wondering like, yeah, they've won, but like, what's going on? Michael Penix reminded everyone that he's still Michael Penix. And then you had Dylan Johnson, who was a revelation. 256 rushing yards, 4 rushing touchdowns. USC actually fired their defensive coordinator after the game. We can talk about that a little bit. But what was your biggest takeaway? Because I got to see it with my own eyes, and it just felt like we had Penix and Johnson on after for a post-game interview. And Johnson said something that made me laugh, because Penix smiled huge when he said it. He said, we finally silenced the haters. Like we heard all of you, and we at least this will silence the haters for a little while. So they heard the noise. They heard people questioning like, what's going on with Washington?
Well, yeah, go check out that interview on YouTube, because it's a really fun segment with you 3 and our crew on the set there. I think this, and I immediately go back to when I was coaching at SC. It's so hard when you're undefeated. You know, it just is when everybody is gearing up for you, but then also for you to bring it every week. You know, and that's why I have a ton of respect for what Georgia, Florida State, Michigan, Ohio State have done. Like it is a challenge to do that, because the pressure just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. But what Kalen DeBoer has been phenomenal at, we've spent a ton of time with him, is that he's been on championship runs. Now, granted, it haven't been in the spotlight like this, but I think what he learned at Sioux Falls in his 30s, when he won 90% of the games and a bunch of national titles, was how to manage a season, because there are so many peaks and valleys in a season. How can you just find a way to not lose hope? And to me, find a way to celebrate playing versus playing tight. And basically what I call exhale wins, Ash, of like, oh, thank God we got the win. When we look at UW, and you saw it with your own eyes, I'd be curious if you'd agree, they seem, at least through the screen, like they are fired up to play. Even in a tough game against Arizona State where they get a pick 6 to basically win the game, or a challenging environment where Stanford's making a comeback and UW jumped on them early. To me, they keep looking like they're excited to play, and they're not playing tight. And I think that's a big moment, because no one in the country, and I say that with Florida State, who do they have their second to last game? Nobody in a Power 5 league. Who does the SEC often play in week 11? No one in a Power Five conference. So I say that if no one has a more challenging road than Washington the last month of the season. Nobody in America. Didn't hear that at all in the show we just watched regarding the college football playoff. And that should be talked about because nobody's going to have a more difficult path. And I think if they continue to, man, bring energy and bring that excitement and create that, they'll be just fine versus get tight when they go to Corvallis or tight in the Apple Cup. That's what I think happens to teams when they're undefeated. And I haven't seen an element of that yet to make me have cause for concern.
Yeah, and we should just mention, to put a bow on that, Washington technically, and we got this confirmed through the guru Jim Thornby, could clinch a spot in Vegas this weekend. They would need to beat Utah, and then you need to have USC, Arizona, and Oregon State would all need to lose. So there is one scenario in which Washington could punch its ticket. But Washington and Oregon, yes, they're in the driver's seat. If they win out, they'll be in Vegas. Let's talk about the Ducks. They handled Cal this weekend. You were there. You called that game. It did not rain at Autzen because it never rains at Autzen. Just want to confirm that that's true.
Yeah, 100%.
And they've got a USC team Saturday night, Yogs, that just fired its defensive coordinator. Lincoln Riley let go of Alex Grinch after the Trojans lost to Washington late Saturday night. What do you make of the Ducks right now? And what are you predicting for that one on Saturday night?
Yeah, so two chunks, I think, to answer that question. I think for one, when you talk about Oregon, and this is what goes on in the committee. You sat on the mock committee. I've been on the mock committee. I get to present to the committee on behalf of the conference, along with Jim Thornby and Merton Hanks and George Kliavkoff. Among the 13 people, a lot of the nuanced decisions, like is it best resume or is it who's playing the best right now? Is it ranked win at the time or is it how are the teams playing now? That's all up to them individually. And there's a lot of people in that room that look at going on the road at Texas Tech in week 2, in the craziest game in Texas Tech in the last 5+ seasons, and having tortillas thrown at them and all the things that happen when you're in that amazing environment. So yeah, that's a pretty good win. Oregon's not getting a lot of credit for that game right now because of where Texas Tech sits in their season. But at the time, with Tyler Shuck healthy, you have to give that a little bit of credit. So that's a debate that'll go on in that room. I think the other debate will be around USC. And if there's another disappointment I have, and I get it, like there's a large portion of the country that says the wheels have fallen off at USC. That is the perception because they did fire our good friend Alex Grinch, and their defense has struggled dramatically for the majority of his tenure. But with that said, Ash, this is one of the best offenses in America, and they are, I'd say, 5 snaps away from being 9-1. Notre Dame was a wrap. I mean, turned the ball over. They had no chance in that one. It got away early. And they still had a chance to kind of take a run out of here late in the third, early in the fourth quarter in that ball game. But my point is that you look at the Utah game, you look at the UW game. If anybody just watches those games in singularity, they would say, yeah, SC had their chances. Right? Bryson Barnes, the pig farmer, T-shirt sales go through the roof because of what he did in that game. I think UW, Michael Penix, they're on set with you because of the way they ran the ball in that game. But it wasn't as though UW ran him out of the collie. So I was surprised to see them not in the top 25. And I think if I'm an Oregon fan, I'm bummed about that because this is going to be a top 25 win. Bo Nix, Caleb, and Michael Penix Jr., front runners for the Heisman. But as a voter, I put Caleb Williams at number 3 right now on my ballot because of how he's carried his team. Excellence with integrity. This guy's defined it. He's not the best quarterback on the best team, in my opinion. That is what the award has become in the majority of recent years, Ash. So I think if I'm an Oregon fan, I'm bummed because you want a ranked SC coming to Autzen, to your point. And for SC, I'd be frustrated. I think this adds a little bit of fuel to them. Not that they need any already, but I think it sets up for extremely competitive game. And for the people watching it, don't think this is an Oregon team against an unranked opponent like it was Cal over the weekend. Yeah. This should be a hell of a game. And the Ducks are balling. Like, I think they're going to win the line of scrimmage. It's going to be a physical game, but they're not playing nobody in week 10. They're not playing a non-Power 5 team. They are playing a team that has the best player, you could argue, in the upcoming NFL draft, let alone one of the best players in the history of our lifetimes at the quarterback position.
So I'm curious, and I mean, don't mean to put you on the spot, but I guess that's exactly what I'm doing. So Penix and Nix on your Heisman ballot, who's 1 and who's 2 right now?
Well, I'm a big fan. We'll take the fans through it maybe in the next couple of weeks. But I've got a whole system of how I do the Heisman. I think it's one of the coolest things that I get to do along with my partner Ted Robinson. It's really fun, and to me, a part of it is head to head. And those two guys, while they never played each other, They both lead their units in ways that we don't see very often in college football, right? Because of the era that we're in, right? Pre-NIL, do these guys come back? Maybe, because they both love their experience in Eugene and in Seattle, respectively. But I couldn't say it with a straight face saying, yep, that didn't play a part into it. So I think we're seeing excellence in an era that we traditionally probably wouldn't have. So right now, I'd go to Seattle. I'd give Michael Penix Jr. the nod. He made the play at the end of the game. It was an incredible audible at the line of scrimmage, the throw to Rome Odunze. You know what I'm talking about. He's put his team on his shoulders, but it is razor thin, and we'll see how this thing shakes out. Because Bo Nix, to me, and you may have seen it over the weekend. We had a graphic in our game of not just his completion percentage, but where he's thrown the ball. I think again, a lazy fan might say, yeah, any quarterback with a high completion percentage, he's on record pace in the history of college football, by the way, completion percentage wise. But most people think, yeah, it's just screens, it's swing screens, it's balls that are 0 to 5 yards down the field. And it's not. It's intermediate, it's deep balls, it's crossing routes, it's timing routes. I mean, they're running a version of the West Coast offense that's spread and up tempo under Will Stein, their offensive coordinator. So he needs to get a lot more credit. But these are the two guys that are coming out. Just because we both love content, I'd love to have them both on the same PJ just to record the entire thing on the way to New York City. It'd be a blast. But if I had to pick it today, I'd go Penix, but I'm glad I don't have to because we got a couple weeks left.
You don't have to. You don't have to, unless you're, a Heisman voter, maybe on a different coast, and maybe you would just vote today.
You just send it in early, right?
We've seen that happen before.
Yeah, a la Christian McCaffrey. Embarrassment. Lose your vote.
I'll bring that up anytime I can. And I will say, there's going to be plenty of moments for them to have a lot more Heisman moments throughout the course of the end of the season, which I can't believe we're getting into the final 3 weeks. It's wild. It has gone fast. I would love to just give, before we wrap, one shout out to the Beavs, because they still have everything in front of them. They still get to play Washington and Oregon. They've got Stanford at home this weekend. And we won't get into tiebreakers because I care too much again about our friend Jim Thornby's health and well-being, but like the Beavs are right there, and it could all come down to that rivalry game against the Ducks in many ways, like it did last year. Yeah.
Stat of Thornby's inbox. Okay. I'll say this, and we need to talk about them and Utah, in my opinion. Two different stories. Oregon State, let's just be really real about it. With where they sit in the landscape of college football at number 12 in today's college football playoff rankings, and where they're going to sit when the season ends, which is where are we playing, who are we playing, is an utter embarrassment to the sport. And we need to give that team and Jonathan Smith all the props in the world to keep that team locked in completely. You didn't see guys dipping. You haven't seen guys quitting. You haven't seen any of that. You have seen Jonathan Smith do one of the more miraculous coaching jobs, I think, Ash, in my entire career because of what he's had to navigate, right? Damian Martinez people were trying to poach him middle of last season to other schools in other parts of the country. He's held his roster intact. He's built his roster in recruiting. Aiden Childs, you could argue, among the freshman quarterbacks in the country, is he number one? I mean, I get that he's not playing 50, 60 snaps a game, but the future there is tremendously bright. So we have to give them credit. And you are right. Who do they get to play is going to give them the opportunity to get to a place where very few people pick them in preseason, which is to get to Las Vegas. Can you imagine that year or that story? I think it'd be absolutely phenomenal. And I think after watching their game back this morning against Colorado in advance of that and watching them all season, even in the Arizona game, I know that Jonathan Smith would love to have the last 2 minutes of the first half back and kick that field goal instead of going for the fake. I mean, we could be talking about a team that also lost to number 13, Washington State on the road. I mean, there's a world where you look at their two losses and say, yeah, they kind of should have got both of them. It should be sitting 9-0 in the current landscape we sit in college football. They're not. That's not their reality, but I do think they need to get props. And to that point, Utah. Name another team in America. Name another team on this list that we see that if they lost their two best players on offense in a sport driven by offense, that they'd be sitting at 7-2 with Kyle Whittingham rocking a pig farmer t-shirt in the postgame. It's happening.
And several other guys on defense too. Like they've lost dudes all over.
Countless guys. Like the Heisman, that's a challenging vote. And I'm proud to have a vote. I'm so glad I don't have to vote for Coach of the Year because I don't know who you go with.
Yeah.
Kalen DeBoer, Dan Lanning, Kyle Whittingham, Jonathan Smith, Jed Fish. I mean, you just look at who's ranked today. That is not.
You could make a case you would feel good about casting a vote for any of those head coaches. I totally agree.
Yeah. Tremendous. The
pig farmer t-shirt. I got to get one of those.
Yeah. Hey, they're not cheap though. I looked. They're not cheap, Ash. If they
Yeah,
go to the title game, which I don't, they're gonna have to need a ton of help, but we'll get a couple for when we get to Vegas
we'll
for
get a
sure.
couple. We'll
I think
put
we
that
should
on
just
Thorny's
rock.
expense report.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. First half, second half of this of the Pac-12 title game, we should rock like somebody's gear from both of the teams from their NIL deals. You in?
I'm in. Count me
Yeah.
fully in. And by the way, our buddy Jim Thornby, who we keep calling out, he says we've got over 16,000 remaining scenarios. So
Don't stay out of the inbox. He doesn't want that heat right now.
don't ask. Just
Yeah.
stop asking.
Yeah.
No, I'm excited. It's getting down to it, which is hard to believe. And I'm pumped that we get to be at Arizona and Colorado for this game this weekend. It's God's country, Yogs. Boulder,
Well,
Colorado in November is like supposed to be sunny, high, like low 50s. So bring your jacket. You're not in Venice Beach anymore.
I know. I got to tell you something I haven't told you yet. I know we're supposed to, we're supposed to go to dinner on Thursday night because we both get in, but I'm going to actually head to Mullen High School because they're giving me a private tour of where your Hall of Fame jersey and cleats reside.
Yeah, you got to get tickets to that. You can't just walk in and get
No, we've been working it. We've been working it. Don't worry. I got a whole PR team. We're on this one. We got to go see where all the magic, was truly curated.
It's been a while since you dropped Mullen Hall of Fame, so I really appreciate that. I thought you'd lost your touch, but thanks. Yeah. Thanks, Yogs.
Got it.
Oh, man, I'm excited to see you. Again, our pregame coverage starts at 10 a.m. Pacific time. The game tips at 11 a.m. Pacific, noon local. And it's going to be wild to see. Khalil Tate's going to be there. He's got some good memories from Boulder.
Yeah, he does. Yeah,
so
he does. Maybe we mic him up in the game. That'd be fun.
Yeah,
maybe we mic him up in the game.
I love this. I love the ideas that get generated.
Hit Molinari's inbox. Let's go.
It's basically our production meeting. All right, everybody. Thank you for joining us. As always, we appreciate you. And we'll be back next week. But yeah, tune in 10 a.m. on Saturday. We will be live from Boulder, Colorado. Pack a coat, Yogi. Pack a coat.
Okay.